Back with Peter Schweitzer. You have, Peter, done more to clean up the corruption in Washington, I think, in the last 90 days than most people do in a lifetime.
Well, I think it's the American people that have been very upset about it. I'm the messenger providing the information.
I understand that. But you are, you have made a huge, huge impact. Full disclosure, Peter also helped write Broke, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
One of the researchers and writers on Broke. Okay. The name of the book is Throw Them All Out. It is a great book. I want to get to this George Soros thing here in a second, but I want to do two more because this land deal thing that I read about is, I warn you, your head is going to, as I said on Friday, you'll have eye cramps. Watch this one.
Well, there's another legal way that you can get rich, what I call legal graft, and that's the land deal. Again, this is legal. It's not deemed unethical by the standards of Congress. To give you one example, this is Dennis Hastert, Speaker of the House.
And he seems like a good guy. I mean, the public is like, you know, he's a good guy.
Yeah, a wrestling coach who ran for Congress, became Speaker of the House. Well, in 2004, he bought, in a series of transactions, 333 acres of land out in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. 4 months after that, as Speaker of the House, he puts in an earmark into the federal transportation budget to create the Prairie Parkway, which sounds nice. The trouble is that this Prairie Parkway runs right by the 333 acres that he had accumulated. And the land that was out in the middle of nowhere is now no longer going to be out in the middle of nowhere. And he's able to sell it for twice what he paid for it in less than a year.
I mean, you would, if somebody would have paid, if I would have purchased the land in the middle of nowhere, then I went to my congressman and I said, look, I'm going to give you half of what I can sell this land for. You just put this in. We'd go to jail, would we not?
Yes, that's bribery.
We'd go to jail.
Yes.
He does it himself, and it's perfectly legal.
That's right. And by the standards of Congress, all they have to prove on earmarks is that at least one other person benefits besides themselves, and it's okay for them to profit and see their value go up through earmarks. It's just outrageous. They're using our taxpayer money to enrich themselves.
Okay, the IPO and
IPOs. Another way they get rich is initial public offerings of stock. And the example here would be Nancy Pelosi. If you go into a congressman's office and offer them $10,000 in a shoebox, it's bribery. You're going to jail. But if you go into a congressman's office and say, look, I need a favor, but I'm going to give you 5,000 shares of stock, you're going to get to buy it at $44 a share. The next day, it's going to sell for $66 a share and then be worth $90 a share. In other words, you're making $100,000 or more in one day. That's completely legal. And so IPOs, initial public offerings of stock, happened. That's what happened to Nancy Pelosi in 2008.
If I were in a meeting, I was in a meeting this weekend where I heard about deals that, you know, are being made.
Yeah.
I can't, an IPO. I can't trade on that. I can't make a dime on that.
Right.
She can be in the same thing.
Yes.
She's fine.
Yes, and she received these Visa IPO shares, by the way, at a time when there was legislation that Visa was very concerned about.
Right.
When she was Speaker
It was
of the
the
House.
Financial Regulation Bill,
That's right. And she killed that for 2 years. So Visa got what it wanted for 2 years,
and
she
she
and her
got
husband
paid for it.
And she and her husband.
This is. There's no way, Peter. There's no way. I mean, they won't leave. This is why. I mean, I've had several congressmen tell me that all of the people that came in under the Tea Party, there's far less than half of those people that still have their souls.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's been a year.
Yeah.
It's been a year.
It's incredibly seductive. There's an old saying in Washington, D.C. that when you show up, it's a cesspool. You stay long enough, it's a hot tub.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
That is
they
great.
end up sort of swimming around.
Yeah.
So those are the land deals and the IPOs that get used.
Okay, now you want to flip this? Let's flip this, because now this is where it gets good. And I urge you to share this information with your friends. And look, Peter is, as you see, Peter is taking on both sides. This is not something that just one side is doing. There's both sides. This goes back to the people who want big government. This is why Benjamin Franklin and our founders had designed Congress to be an uncomfortable place. You'd be like, I don't want to serve. I don't want to serve. You would go there. You wanted to get the hell out of there. I mean, really, one of the benefits in putting it in Washington was it was built in a mosquito-infested swamp.
That's right.
And people didn't want to live there.
Yeah.
So get out. You do it quickly. You go. If you got rid of just this,
yeah,
people would want to go back to the private sector.
They would.
And they wouldn't put these onerous laws in place because they know they'd have to deal with what they're putting in.
That's right. They warned in the Federalist Papers that when you have a situation where Congress does not have to abide by laws as the rest of American people, that's the beginning of tyranny.
Well, there it is. Okay.
Yes. So let's talk about George Soros as an example of crony capitalism outside of government.
Now, I want you to understand, America, this is just the beginning. We're just going to take on one sector. We're going to he doubled his money or made $8 billion in 18 months. He made some extraordinary.
Yes, he's made billions of dollars over a short period of time. People often assume that George Soros is interested in politics for politics' sake.
No,
and that's destructive and not. Actually, it is a method of profit. So we're talking about George Soros, and what's interesting is when you look at the people that he often hires at his hedge funds, it's people like Malik Brown, who worked at the United Nations, did not have any background per se in finance, but was hired as a vice president of his hedge fund. And part of it is because he has good relations with government officials around. George Soros, we also know, of course, funds the Center for American Progress,
which is behind the stimulus. He's also with Tides Foundation, which has designed the stimulus, the Apollo Alliance. All of this stuff, you're saying with the UN guy, it's the same thing as Tides and Center for American Progress. He's affecting politics that will affect his wallet.
That's exactly right. And so what you have with George Soros is that in late 2008, after Obama was elected, in early 2009, as they're formulating the stimulus, Soros is neck deep involved in those discussions. He's meeting with the top economists. He's meeting with President Obama. He's meeting with White House officials on a regular basis. And he's explaining to them how to structure the bailout, what it should include, infrastructure, medical, electronic records, that sort of thing. What he's doing while he's engaging in that sort of political involvement is he's buying stock in all kinds of company. And just sort of look at what happens. One of the companies that he buys into is American Electric Power. In early 2009, before the stimulus passes, he buys 1.5 million shares. A few months later, in June of 2009, the Obama administration clears $1 billion in grants for American Electric Power project called Future Gen, which is going to be built in Illinois. That's part of the tie.
In Illinois.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine that.
Yeah.
You wonder who owns the land.
Yeah,
that's the other question.
isn't it?
Then you have Ameren, which is another energy company. He buys that in early 2009, and in June they get $540 million of our money, goes to this company for an energy project. If you look at Allegheny Energy, he buys 250,000 shares of that company, which ends up getting lots of grants. The same thing with Biofuel Energy, Constellation Energy, and Covanta. These are all companies that he buys into in early 2009 that end up getting stimulus money, loan guarantees, and grants.
Let me play, not devil's advocate, let me play the devil. I invest in a lot of things, and I had nothing to do. How would I know that any of these things were going to get bailed out, to get any kind of grants?
Well, and this is the argument people will make, that it's coincidence. Here's the interesting thing, though. When the Securities and Exchange Commission investigates insider trading, they look at, does the individual have access to information, and is there a curious pattern or timing to their trades?
Oh, just luck. I'm an old man.
By this definition, I think that it meets it very, very clearly. And you have the same thing with Entergy and Edison International and NRG Energy. These are all companies that end up getting large amounts of taxpayer money.
That just a few months earlier, he buys into.
That's exactly right. PowerSpan, for example, this company down here, he buys into it in April of 2009. On July 1st, they get $100 million of our taxpayer money for smart grid programs.
Now, let's remember, all of this stuff, right? All of this stuff, this is all the stimulus.
Yes, that's right.
And let's not forget that Tides, the Tides Foundation, gets money from him.
Right.
And that has Van Jones in the Apollo Alliance, right?
Right.
And the Apollo Alliance is the thing that does the stimulus.
Right.
And then when we rat out Van Jones, and Jones leaves. Where does he go? Whoops.
Center American Progress.
Center for American Progress.
That's right.
I mean, this is so clear.
It is.
There's not a courtroom in the world that wouldn't say, at least there isn't a grand jury that wouldn't say, yeah, I think we need to see all the evidence.
That's exactly right. Let me give you a couple of more names that show the same thing. The first one is the name Kathy Zoe. She's the Assistant Secretary of Energy who approves a lot of these loans. She leaves the Department of Energy. You know where she goes? She goes and works for a new investment fund that is funded by George Soros. Let me give you another name, a gentleman named Steve Spinner. Steve Spinner is one of the individuals who is a senior advisor for green energy loans and grants at the Department of Energy. When he leaves the Department of Energy, where does he go? He becomes a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. So you see this cycling, this revolving door of individuals who see to it that money goes to Soros-held investments, and then they turn around and work and get a paycheck from George Soros.
Could you come on the radio tomorrow and talk to me a little bit? Did you do anything on the Clintons?
There is stuff on the Clintons. There's also things on Warren Buffett. Buffett has this squeaky clean image. He is neck deep into the same thing as George Soros.
All right, will you come on the radio tomorrow?
I would love to do that.
We'll pick that up tomorrow. The book is Throw Them All Out. This makes the case for not hiring a Washington insider and big government progressive in Washington. Trouble, gang, unless we can stop this.